Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mad Barn Academy. And if you're new here, welcome. We hope to earn your subscription today. Our discussion for today's presentation is going to be about water, the most important nutrient. I think we can all relate to having a horse or knowing a horse that is a poor drinker. And with summer right around the corner and the 2024 competition season really now in full swing, I thought this would be a great topic to cover today. So let's get started. Okay, so I felt like I couldn't talk about water without throwing this slide into the presentation. I think we're all familiar with this classic saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. What I find really amazing is that for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we've recognized how stubborn horses can be when it comes to drinking water. So much so, the behavior was used as inspiration for Haywood's metaphor to describe stubborn people. We'll wrap up today's presentation talking through some tips and tricks for encouraging drinking. So maybe one horse at a time, we can sort of phase out this saying. We'll see. Okay, so water is the most important nutrient. It is involved in all physiologic processes essential to life. The horse's body is about 70% water, which can be split between extracellular and intracellular compartments. All this means is that the body water is contained either within the cells or specifically the cellular cytoplasm, or it's contained kind of outside the cells, such as in blood plasma, interstitial fluid, GI fluid, etc. So adequate hydration is critical for health and performance. Every organ system, every cell in the body requires water. And I've listed some of those most important functions we think about for horses specifically, but this is a very short list compared to really the wide-reaching effects of water throughout the body. So the average sized horse in a thermoneutral climate, which would be defined as 45 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 to 18 degrees Celsius, will drink about 6 to 10 gallons or 23 to 38 liters of water a day. This amount will increase for horses in hot or humid climates, horses in moderate or greater exercise, and mares that are lactating. For these scenarios, we expect water consumption to be, anywhere from 2, maybe even 3 times maintenance requirements. There are a few ways to assess hydration status in the horse. The definitive way is via blood work, where the veterinarian will look at the hematocrit or packed cell volume, abbreviated PCV. A normal PCV in an adult horse is anywhere from 37 to 42%, depending on the source that you read. A PCV that is over 42% would be considered hemoconcentrated, and the most common cause of hemoconcentration is dehydration. An okay estimate for hydration is mucous membrane moisture and capillary refill time, or CRT. For this assessment, you will simply lift the lip and blanch the gums with your finger. You've probably seen your veterinarian do this before. For a normal, healthy horse, the gums should be pink and moist, and the color should return to that blanched area within 2 seconds. A dehydrated horse, or one that has not been drinking regularly or drinking as expected, is going to have dry or tacky mucous membranes and a delayed CRT. So lastly, for day-to-day monitoring of hydration status, really the best thing that you can do is pay attention to water buckets and manure consistency. So fill your buckets to the same level each day and look at how much water is left over the next time you go to refill them. Doing this for each horse every day is going to give you an idea of what's normal for that horse, and you'll be able to catch changes in drinking behavior more quickly. Additionally, normal manure should be formed, but moist and easily breakable. Horses with really dry, hard fecal balls are not drinking enough water. Not enough water is going through the gut, and those horses are really at risk for impaction if they don't already have an impaction. So, in order for the body to maintain water balance or homeostasis, water intake needs to equal water output. For inputs, we know horses obviously take in water from drinking and then also from the food that they eat, forages, and other feed products. There's also a small percentage of water that's produced from the body during normal metabolic processes, and that's termed metabolic water. For outputs, horses lose water through sweat, manure, and urination. A very small percentage of water that's lost is termed insensible water loss. And that's just describing water that's lost through normal bodily processes like respiration or breathing. So there are many factors that influence both water input and water output. We're going to be focusing the remainder of our presentation today on the factors that affect water intake and how we can really improve intake. But it's important to note that the factors that affect water losses, like diet and exercise, certainly relate back to intake anyways. So it's sort of um, you kind of come full circle when talking about these things. Other reasons for water loss, like certain disease states such as severe GI disease or renal disease, are really special situations that we kind of categorize outside of normal. And that's why I've kind of labeled them with asterisks here. And these sorts of issues are going to be kind of a different topic for a different day. So let's start with diet composition as a factor or factors that affect water intake. Both moisture content and protein content are going to affect how much a horse drinks. If the diet is already high in moisture, then horses will drink less water overall. For example, horses grazing on pasture drink less because fresh grass has a very high moisture content. Conversely, horses consuming primarily hay will drink more water because hay is very low in moisture. Additionally, long stem fiber is very hydrophilic, meaning it really likes to draw water to itself, and this draws water into the gut. And this really increases the thirst response in horses consuming more long stem fiber and dry hay. Diets high in protein will also increase water intake. This is because the breakdown products of protein, nitrogenous wastes, are excreted in the urine. So the more protein that's in the diet, the more nitrogenous waste that's produced, which means the more water that's needed for urinary excretion. Okay, next we have water characteristics and availability, which is probably fairly intuitive for most of us, I think. Horses with inconsistent access to fresh, clean water will drink less. That seems pretty obvious. A few other things to think about include horses drink better if the water is a more neutral temperature. Uh, you know, Particularly in the winter time, this becomes a problem when water becomes very cold. Horses, there is research to show that horses drink better out of buckets or open troughs versus something like an automatic waterer. And then certainly if there's any type of sedimentation or contamination in a water bucket or a water source that's affecting the taste or the smell, it would be expected that the horse isn't going to want to drink from that source as often. Another intuitive factor is ambient temperature. And how that affects water intake. So just like us, horses living in really hot or humid climates are going to drink more. Uh, that water is needed for thermoregulation and sweating so that those animals don't overheat. Physiologic status also affects water intake, which I've already alluded to. So horses in moderate, heavy, or very heavy exercise will drink more water, and they'll certainly require more water if they're exercising in hot climates. Additionally, we know that mares that are lactating require more water because of milk production. So lastly, and probably most frustratingly, is individual variation also exists. So different horses will have different preferences or drinking habits. So it's really important to learn your horse's drinking behavior so that you know if something changes. All right, let's wrap up today with some tips and tricks for encouraging water intake. We'll kind of work our way down from most important or kind of biggest picture to more fine-tuned options for those really, really picky horses. So first on our list is ensure 24/7 free choice access to fresh, clean water. Seems obvious, but it's still really important to make sure that this is happening. So when horses are stalled, they need to have access to clean water buckets in front of them. If they're out on pasture, those water sources need to be available or easily accessible to every horse that's in the pasture, whether that's a natural water source like a creek or a pond or a water trough. Needs to be somewhere that every horse of every age, of every physiologic status is going to be able to get to. And then certainly it's really important to clean your buckets, clean your water troughs, and clean those automatic waters frequently to make sure that there's no buildup of sedimentation or contaminants or debris in those buckets. Next on the list is to add salts and or electrolytes to your horse's meals. So I always caution people against relying on free choice access to salt blocks to meet sodium requirements or to encourage drinking in their horses. Generally, horses are not going to consume enough of a salt block free choice to maintain their sodium requirements. So I always say to force the issue, add some salt to their meals. For the average sized horse, you can do 1 to 2 tablespoons of plain table salt, either iodized or uniodized is fine. Certainly, if you're in a hotter climate or your horse is in much heavier exercise, you can increase that up to 3 tablespoons. And then electrolytes can be a really useful way to encourage horses to drink. So you can certainly add some electrolytes as well. I usually like to add electrolytes with my salt just to make sure I'm still meeting all of those electrolyte and sodium requirements. And your electrolytes you can even reserve for those more special situations like travel or during the summertime when you're exercising in particularly hot weather. All right, third on our list is to use heated water buckets or trough heaters during the winter time to keep that water at a more neutral temperature. And then certainly keeping buckets and troughs clear of ice in the wintertime is really important to make sure horses always have access to fresh water. Fourth on the list is to soak hay or to soak your horse's grain meals each day. So adding soaked forage cubes or soaked beet pulp to meals definitely increases water intake. You can soak the grain into a mash. You can also soak or steam the hay to increase some water content, but don't forget that soaking the hay does leach out some other nutrients, so it'll be important to make sure that you're meeting vitamin and mineral requirements with your other feeds or other products in the diet. Tips 5 and 6 are a little bit more fine-tuned, particularly for those really picky horses, or if you're traveling off property a lot and have a hard time getting your horse to drink off property. These two tricks might be helpful for you. 5 is to use water buckets instead of relying on automatic waterers. There is, as I mentioned, there's research to show that horses will drink more if they are offered water from a bucket or from an open trough. Also, there was a research study that showed horses preferred to drink out of lighter colored buckets. Teal and light blue were the preferred colors from that study versus dark buckets like black, navy blue, hunter green, etc. So you could consider something like that, spruce up the stalls with some fancy teal water buckets. And then you can certainly consider offering some flavored water as well. This might be a good strategy for those horses traveling, and if they don't like the taste of the water off property or something like that. So different options for flavoring water buckets include, obviously you can add some powdered electrolytes. You can add something yummy like Gatorade. Some horses like apple cider vinegar, apple juice to a water bucket. I've also recommended before adding a small handful of grain into the bottom of the bucket and making sort of a sweet tea. It's always important to offer a flavored bucket with a plain bucket of water as well. And then remember that sugary options are not going to be ideal for those horses with metabolic concerns. So just be mindful to choose an appropriate option for your horse. Alrighty, so here are references for today, and thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and explore the other videos on our channel, and check out the additional links I provided in the description below. There's some extra information about dehydration and reinforcing good drinking habits in horses. So feel free to reach out if you have questions. All right, thanks guys. Until next time.